They buried an empty casket this morning. The mahogany box cost $6,000 money I didn't have charged to a credit card that was already maxed out. Standing there in the relentless Seattle rain, listening to Father McGregor drone on about Mark's generous spirit. I didn't feel the crushing weight of grief that the movies promise. I felt the cold, hard barrel of panic pressed against my temple. The mourners looked at me with pity, seeing a young widow paralyzed by loss. They were wrong. I wasn't paralyzed by loss. I was paralyzed by the text message I had just received from Wells Fargo Insufficient Funds. My husband hadn't just died and left me a widow. He had died and left me a pauper. But as the rain soaked through my black veil, I didn't know that the greatest humiliation wasn't the debt. It was the secret waiting in my mailbox that would turn my grief into a weapon. The drive home from the cemetery was a blur of gray highway and windshield wipers, fighting a losing battle against the storm. My 2018 Volvo, the safe family car, Mark insisted we buy, smelled like stale Cheerios and wet wool. In the rearview mirror, my 7-year-old daughter Lily stared out the window, clutching the stuffed bear her father had given her. She was silent. She had been silent for 2 weeks, ever since the Coast Guard called to say they found the debris of the sea wolf, but no bodies. "Mommy." Her voice was small, barely audible over the hum of the tires on wet pavement. "Is Daddy cold?" My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. "No, baby," I lied, my voice cracking. "Daddy's not cold. Daddy is Maeve at peace." If only I knew how wrong I was. Mark wasn't at peace, and he certainly wasn't cold. We pulled into the driveway of our 4-bedroom colonial in Bellevue. From the outside, it looked like the American dream repackaged for Zillow-manicured lawn 3-car garage, neutral beige siding. But inside, it was a crime scene of financial ruin. I parked the car and walked Lily inside, navigating through a fortress of unopened Amazon boxes stacked in the foyer. They were monuments to Mark's spending addiction gadgets, golf clubs, designer sneakers, items purchased on credit to fill the void of a soul that was never satisfied. I made Lily a peanut butter sandwich because the fridge was empty. The Sub-Zero refrigerator, a $5,000 appliance, held nothing but a bottle of expired Chardonnay and a jar of pickles. I sat at the kitchen island, the granite cold under my elbows, and stared at the pile of mail I had been avoiding for weeks. The envelopes were color-coded by urgency, white for junk, yellow for warnings, pink for final notices. Today the pile was mostly pink. I poured myself a glass of the sour wine and started opening them. Foreclosure warning, vehicle repossession notice, private school tuition past due. The numbers blurred together. 2 months behind on the mortgage, 3 months behind on the car. Mark had been drowning us long before he drowned himself. I felt a scream building in my throat, a primal sound of rage and terror, but I swallowed it down with the bad wine. I couldn't fall apart, not yet. I had to find the life insurance policy. That was the lifeline. $2 million. The prudential safety net Mark had bragged about. I dug through the pile looking for the heavy cream envelope from the insurance company. I found it at the bottom, stained with coffee rings. I tore it open, my fingers trembling. I unfolded the letter, expecting salvation. Instead, I found a death sentence. Dear Mrs. Davidson, regarding claim 892201. Due to the inconclusive nature of the accident and the absence of a death certificate verified by a coroner, the payout has been placed on indefinite hold pending a full fraud investigation. Furthermore, recent flagged activity on the policyholder's accounts requires us to... The room spun. Fraud investigation, flagged activity. I dropped the letter. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. He hadn't just left us in debt, he had left us under suspicion. I walked over to the sink and splashed cold water on my face, gasping for air. The walls of the kitchen felt like they were closing in. I needed air. I needed to scream where Lily couldn't hear me. I grabbed the rest of the mail and stormed out to the garage. I sat in the driver's seat of the Volvo, the engine cold, and let out a guttural roar that scraped my throat raw. I beat the steering wheel until my hands throbbed. I cursed Mark. I cursed the ocean. I cursed the day I met him at that charity gala, charmed by his dazzling smile and his rented tuxedo. After 5 minutes of rage, I slumped back against the seat, exhausted. My eyes drifted to the passenger floor mat. I had dropped a few envelopes in my haste. One of them had slid under the seat. I reached down and pulled it out. It wasn't a bill. It was a standard government envelope from the Department of Motor Vehicles. But the return address wasn't Olympia, Washington. It was Tallahassee, Florida. I frowned. Florida. We hadn't been to Florida in 5 years. Mark hated the humidity. I ripped the envelope open, expecting a clerical error. Traffic violation notice. Date November 12th. Time 10:42 a.m. Location Collins Avenue, Miami Beach, FL. Vehicle 2023 Ford Mustang convertible. Rental. infraction 65 mph in a 35 mph zone. My brain stalled. November 12th. The funeral was today, November 28th. The boat accident was October 30th. Mark died 2 weeks before this ticket was issued. It's a mistake, I whispered to the empty garage. Identity theft. Someone stole his license. But then I turned the page over. In the state of Florida, traffic citations often include a black and white photo of the driver from the traffic cam, legally required for identification disputes. The world stopped turning. The silence in the garage became deafening, ringing in my ears, like a high-pitched alarm. The photo was grainy, but the sunlight hitting the driver's face was unforgivingly clear. It was Mark. He wasn't a bloated corpse at the bottom of the Pacific. He was tanned. He was wearing a linen shirt unbuttoned to the chest, and he was laughing. His head was thrown back in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, the kind of joy I hadn't seen on his face in years. On his face were the Ray-Ban aviators I had bought him for our 10th anniversary. I recognized the custom gold rim, and he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat, a woman was leaning toward him, blonde hair whipping in the wind, a hand resting possessively on his shoulder. She was laughing too. I threw up. I didn't have time to open the door. I just leaned over and retched bile onto the passenger floor mat right on top of the foreclosure notice. The physical revulsion was instant and violent. He wasn't dead. He was in Miami. He had faked his death to escape the debts he created, to escape the family he claimed to love, and to run off with a younger woman and a clean slate. He left me to bury an empty box. He left Lily to cry herself to sleep for a father who was probably doing body shots on South Beach right now. I sat there wiping my mouth with the back of my hand, staring at the photo until Mark's laughing face burned into my retinas. The sadness evaporated. The fear of the bank, the shame of the declined credit card, the terror of the future, it all vanished. In its place, something cold and hard settled in my chest. It felt like steel. I wasn't a grieving widow anymore. I was a victim of a felony. You think you're smart, Mark. I hissed, my voice unrecognizable to my own ears. You think you can just hit the reset button on a family. I picked up the ticket. I smoothed out the wrinkles. If I called the police right now, they would arrest him. He would go to jail for insurance fraud and faking his death. But what would happen to me? The debts were in my name too. The house was joint property. If he went to prison, I would still be bankrupt. I would still lose the house. I would be the pitiful wife of a con man left with nothing but shame and legal fees. No. That wasn't justice. That was just a tragedy with a punchline. I needed the insurance money, and I needed him to pay, not with time served, but with everything he had stolen from me. I grabbed my phone. I didn't dial 911. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed a new header. My fingers were steady now. I got out of the car. I walked back into the house, stepping over the Amazon boxes with a new purpose. I went to the kitchen, picked up the bottle of Chardonnay, and poured the rest of it down the sink. I didn't need to numb the pain anymore. I needed to be sharp. I walked upstairs to Mark's home office. The door was closed. I pushed it open. The room smelled like sandalwood and secrets. I sat at his desk, the leather chair squeaking under my weight. I opened his laptop. Password protected, of course. But Mark was arrogant. He thought I was just a trophy wife who didn't understand technology. He thought I was stupid. He used the same password for everything Lily 2016, the year he bought his first Porsche. I typed it in. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. He had changed it. Clever boy. I sat back thinking, what would a narcissist use as a password? What did he love more than his car? More than his daughter? More than me? I looked around the room. My eyes landed on the framed poster of the movie Wall Street on the wall. Gordon Gekko, his idol. I typed, greed is good. Access denied. I typed freedom. Access denied. I closed my eyes trying to get into the headspace of a man who would fake his own death. A man who wanted to erase his past. I typed Miami. Enter. The screen unlocked. My breath hitched. He had been planning this. He had changed the password before he left. I immediately went to his browser history. It had been wiped clean. Of course. But he forgot one thing. The cloud. Mark always synced his devices. I opened the Find My app. It showed his iPhone as offline. He had ditched the phone. Smart. But then I saw it. A gray dot pulsing faintly. Mark's AirPods Pro. Last location 14 minutes ago. The Fontainebleau Hotel Miami Beach. Got you. I leaned back, a dark smile spreading across my face. He was staying at the Fontainebleau. Of course he was. 5-star luxury while his wife and child were eating frozen pizza and waiting for the power to be cut. I needed a plan. A plan that wouldn't just expose him, but would destroy him. I couldn't just fly down there and confront him. He would run again, and I needed that $2 million to clear the liens on the house before the banks took it. I needed the insurance company to declare him dead legally so I could get the check, but I also needed him alive to take the fall for the debt. It was a paradox, unless I tricked him into coming back. I opened a new browser window and logged into Facebook. My profile was flooded with condolences. "So sorry for your loss. He was a great man. Praying for you." I began to type a status update. I needed to set the bait. I needed to appeal to the one thing Mark couldn't resist: money. I am overwhelmed by the outpouring of love. Today, in the midst of my grief, a miracle happened. The insurance investigation has concluded and the funds have been released. Mark took care of us even in death. Lily and I are safe. We are going to be okay. Thank you, Prudential, for expediting the $2,000 payout. I hovered over the post button. It was a lie, a dangerous lie. If the insurance company saw this, they could sue me. But I blocked the post from everyone except a specific list of people: Mark's old poker buddies, his brother, and a few mutual friends I knew he would be stalking online. I clicked post. Now we wait. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The rain was still falling, washing away the dirt of the cemetery. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't look like Sarah, the pharmacist-turned-housewife. I looked like something new, something dangerous. "Enjoy your mojito, Mark," I whispered to the reflection. "It's going to be your last." The phone rang. I jumped. I looked at the caller ID. It was a restricted number. My heart hammered against my ribs. It had been less than 10 minutes. Was it him? Was he really that desperate? I let it ring twice. 3 times. I picked up. "Hello?" Silence. Heavy breathing. Silence on the other end. "Hello?" I repeated, making my voice tremble, playing the part of the fragile widow. "Sarah." The voice was low, distorted, like he was covering the microphone with a cloth. But I knew it. I knew the cadence, the slight arrogance hidden in the vowels. "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the phone so hard the screen almost cracked. It's a miracle, Sarah." "Mark." I gasped, forcing a sob into my voice. "Mark, is that you? Oh my God, they said you were dead." I washed ashore." He lied. The audacity of it. "I've been in a coma in a Mexican hospital. I just woke up. I don't remember much. But I remember you. I remember us." I almost laughed out loud. A Mexican hospital. Coma. It was the plot of a bad soap opera. "Oh, Mark, you're alive." I cried, tears of pure rage streaming down my face. "Where are you? I have to come get you." No, he said quickly. I'm in trouble, Sarah. The hospital. They need money to let me leave. Medical bills, and I need to come home quietly. There are people, bad people." He was improvising. He wanted the money. He saw the post. He wanted me to wire him cash, or he wanted to come back and claim the insurance money before officially revealing he was alive. "I have money, Mark," I said, breathless. "The insurance just paid out today. $2 million, I can pay anything. Just come home." I could hear the smile in his voice through the phone. $2 million, thank God. "Listen, Sarah, don't tell anyone I'm alive yet. Not the police, not the insurance. If you tell them, they'll take the money back. We need that money to start over. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said. "I won't tell a soul. Just come home to me." "I'll be there in 2 days," he said. "Meet me at the old boathouse on Lake Union. Midnight. Bring the checkbook. And Sarah, come alone." "I love you, Mark," I said. The words tasted like poison. "I love you too, baby." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. The tears stopped instantly. I wiped my face with my sleeve. 2 days, midnight, the boathouse. He was coming back. He thought he was coming back to a naive wife and a $2 million payday. He thought he was going to manipulate me into laundering the insurance money for him before disappearing again. He didn't know he was walking into an ambush. I walked over to the wall safe hidden behind the painting in the hallway. I spun the dial Mark's birthday. It opened with a click. Inside, there was no money, just a few legal documents and an old handgun Mark had bought for home protection years ago. A Smith & Wesson .38 Special. I checked the cylinder. It was empty. I found the box of bullets in the back. I loaded one bullet, then another. Then another. I wasn't going to shoot him. That would be too easy. That would be murder. And I wasn't a murderer. I was a woman collecting a debt. But I needed insurance of my own. I put the gun in my purse. Then I picked up the phone again and dialed a different number. This time I wasn't acting. Prudential Fraud Division Agent Miller speaking. "Agent Miller," I said, my voice steady and cold as ice. "My name is Sarah Davidson. You're investigating my husband's death." Yes, Mrs. Davidson. Look, I know this is a difficult time. It's about to get easier for you. I cut him off. I don't want the money yet. I want to make a deal. I know where Mark Davidson is, and I can hand him to you on a silver platter. But I have conditions. There was a pause on the line. I'm listening. I want immunity from any debts incurred by his fraud. I want the liens on my house removed. And I want to be the one who opens the door when you arrest him. If you can prove he's alive, Mrs. Live Davidson, we can talk about a deal. Oh, he's alive, I said, looking at the rain lashing against the window, and he's coming home for a funeral, his own. I hung up. The house was dark, but for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was the thing hiding in it. The next 48 hours were a blur of adrenaline and calculated deception. I moved through the house like a phantom, scrubbing the floors, packing Lily's things into boxes, labeled charity, and preparing for a war that would be fought not with soldiers, but with lawyers and federal agents. I met Agent Miller at a 24-hour diner off I-5, a place that smelled of burnt coffee and grease. He was exactly what I expected. Tired eyes, a cheap suit that didn't fit right in the shoulders, and the cynical demeanor of a man who had seen too many people try to cheat the system. I slid into the booth opposite him, placing a manila folder on the sticky table. "You look better than you sound on the phone, Mrs. Davidson," Miller said, taking a sip of his black coffee. "I'm not Mrs. Davidson anymore," I corrected him, sliding the folder across. "Or at least I won't be after tonight. Is the immunity agreement signed?" Miller opened the folder. Inside were the printouts of Mark's speeding ticket, the location data from his AirPods, and a timeline of his financial transactions leading up to the accident. It was a roadmap of his guilt. Miller nodded, impressed, despite himself. "The U.S. attorney agreed to the terms," Miller said, pulling a document from his briefcase. "You deliver Mark Davidson alive, and we treat you as a cooperating witness, not a co-conspirator. The debts incurred under your name through his fraud will be frozen pending the investigation and likely discharged once we get a conviction. You walk away clean, Sarah. Broke maybe, but clean. Clean is all I need," I said, signing the document. My hand didn't shake. "He's meeting me at the Lake Union boathouse at midnight. He thinks I'm bringing a $2 million cashier's check." "We'll be there," Miller said. "We'll have a tactical team in place by 11:00 p.m. Do not engage him until we give the signal. If he suspects anything, if he runs—" "He won't run," I said, staring at the steam rising from my coffee. "He's too greedy to run." Midnight in Seattle is never truly dark. The low clouds reflect the city lights, creating a bruised purple sky that hangs heavy over the water. I parked the Volvo a block away from the boathouse, turning off the headlights. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, a fine mist that coated the windshield like sweat. I checked the rearview mirror. My eyes were cold, hard flint. I checked my purse. The Smith & Wesson was there, heavy and reassuring. I hoped I wouldn't have to use it, but I knew Mark. Corner a narcissist, and they don't cry, they bite. I stepped out of the car, pulling my trench coat tight around me. The air smelled of diesel fuel, rotting seaweed, and wet pavement. The boathouse was an old wooden structure at the end of a creaking pier, a relic from a time when this part of the lake was industrial. It was dark. The windows boarded up a perfect place for a ghost to hide. My heels clicked on the wooden planks, a rhythmic talk, talk, talk that echoed in the silence. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my breathing was steady. I was terrified, yes, but the hate burning in my gut was stronger than the fear. I reached the door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open. Inside, it was pitch black, save for a single shaft of moonlight cutting through a hole in the roof, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The smell of old oil and damp wood was overpowering. "Mark," I whispered. A shadow detached itself from the darkness in the corner. "Sarah." He stepped into the light. For a second, the breath left my lungs. Seeing him, flesh and blood, was a visceral shock. He looked healthy. Tanned skin, hair slightly longer and bleached by the Florida sun. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, trying to look inconspicuous, but the expensive white sneakers gave him away. He looked nothing like a man who had been in a coma. He looked like a man who had been on vacation. "Oh my God," I choked out, rushing forward. I threw my arms around him. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. His body felt familiar, the shape of his shoulders, the scent of his skin, but beneath the stale sweat I smelled it. Coconut sunscreen, expensive cologne, the scent of betrayal. He hugged me back, but it was stiff. His hands patted my back rhythmically, impatiently. "I missed you so much, baby," he whispered, his voice smooth, practicing the lie. "I was so scared I'd never see you again." I pulled back, looking up at him, forcing tears into my eyes. "You're alive. I can't believe it. The police, they stopped searching weeks ago." I know, he said, glancing nervously toward the door. Listen, we don't have much time. Did anyone follow you? No. I shook my head. I came alone just like you said. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight. Did you bring it? The check. The mask slipped. Just for a fraction of a second, the loving husband vanished and the addict appeared. His eyes darted to my purse. I have it, I said, clutching the bag closer to me. But Mark explained to me, what happened? Why didn't you call sooner? Why did you let us think you were dead? He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a theatrical gesture I had seen him use 1,000 times to get out of speeding tickets or explain away late nights at the office. It's complicated, Sarah. I fell off the boat, hit my head, woke up in a clinic in Tijuana. No ID, no memory. It took me weeks to remember who I was. As soon as I did, I called you, but I can't go to the police yet. There are misunderstandings about the business. If they know I'm alive, they'll freeze everything. We need that insurance money to start fresh. Somewhere new, just you, me, and Lily. It was such a lazy lie. Tijuana, amnesia. He didn't even respect me enough to come up with a convincing story. He thought I was just a dumb ATM machine. You want to run away? I asked softly. We have to... He urged, his eyes manic. I've looked into it. Costa Rica. Or maybe Belize. We can live like royalty there with $2 million. But I need the check, Sarah. Now. Hand it to me. He reached for my purse. I took a step back. What about the debts, Mark? I asked, my voice dropping an octave, losing the tremor. The mortgage, the credit cards, the bookies. He froze. His eyes narrowed slightly. We'll pay them later, or we won't. Who cares? We'll be gone. Sarah, give me the bag. You left us with nothing. I said, the anger starting to bleed through. Do you know I had to sell my engagement ring to buy groceries? Do you know Lily asks for you every night? Well, I'm doing this for Lily. He snapped, his voice echoing in the empty boathouse. Don't you get it? I'm trying to save us. Now stop being a hysterical bitch and give me the goddamn money. There it was, the real Mark. I stopped crying. I straightened my spine. I looked him dead in the eye. You're not doing this for Lily, I said calmly. You're doing this for the blonde in the passenger seat of the Mustang. The silence that followed was absolute. Mark's face went pale, then red. What? I reached into my purse. He lunged forward, thinking I was grabbing the checkbook, but I wasn't. I pulled out the speeding ticket. I slapped it against his chest. He grabbed it, looking down. I saw his eyes scan the photo. I saw the moment his brain processed the date. November 12th. You, he stammered, looking up at me. The arrogance was gone, replaced by confusion and dawn of fear. How did you were speeding on Collins Avenue. I said, my voice dripping with venom. 85 and a 35, reckless driving. Just like you drove our marriage into the ground. He crumpled the paper, throwing it on the floor. So you know, fine, yes, I was in Miami. I needed to clear my head before I came back. I was scared Sarah, I was in trouble with loan sharks. Stop lying, I shouted the sound, startling a pigeon in the rafters. Just stop. There are no loan sharks, Mark. Just you. Just your gambling. Just your greed. You faked your death because you're a coward who couldn't face his own failures. He stared at me, his chest heaving. Then a dark, ugly sneer twisted his handsome face. He took a step toward me. You think you're smart, huh? He growled. You think you've got me cornered? You're just a housewife, Sarah. You're nothing without me. Now give me the checkbook, or I swear to God I'll take it from you. There is no checkbook, I said. And there is no money. I didn't get the payout, Mark. I lied. He stopped. You what? I lied, just like you. I posted that status to flush you out, to make you crawl back here from whatever hole you were hiding in. His face contorted with pure rage. You bitch! You stupid, useless bitch! He lunged at me. I stepped back and pulled the Smith & Wesson from my purse. I leveled it at his chest. He skid to a halt, eyes widening. Whoa! Whoa, Sarah. Put it down. You're not going to shoot me. Give me a reason not to, I said, my hand steady. The metal felt cold and heavy, a stark contrast to the heat in my veins. Give me one reason why the world wouldn't be a better place if you really were dead. He held up his hands, forcing a laugh. Come on, baby, this is crazy. Put the gun down. We can figure this out. I can make it right. You can't make it right, I said. You're legally dead, Mark. You don't exist. If I pulled this trigger right now, who would they look for? You're a ghost. For a moment, I saw genuine terror in his eyes. He realized I was right. He had erased himself from the world, and in doing so, he had stripped himself of all protection. Sarah, please, he whimpered. I'm your husband. No, I said. My husband died on October 30th. You're just the stranger who stole his face. I took a deep breath. I wanted to shoot him. God, I wanted to end it right there. But that would be too quick. He needed to suffer. He needed to rot in a cell thinking about every dollar he stole, every lie he told. I'm not going to kill you, Mark. I lowered the gun slightly. He exhaled, his shoulders sagging in relief. Good. Good girl. Now let's just... But I'm not going to save you either, I interrupted. I raised my left hand and waved it toward the dark corners of the boathouse. Now, I screamed. Bam, bam, bam. Floodlights erupted from the water side and the land side, blindingly bright white light cutting through the darkness. The wooden walls of the boathouse were illuminated as if it were high noon. Federal agents dropped to your knees, hands in the air. The voice was amplified, booming like the voice of God. Mark spun around, shielding his eyes, panicked like a rat in a trap. Red laser dots danced on his chest and forehead. FBI, get on the ground now. Agent Miller stepped out from behind a stack of crates, his weapon drawn, flanked by 4 men in tactical gear with FBI emblazoned on their backs. Mark looked at them, then back at me. His face was a mask of betrayal. You set me up. You set yourself up, I said, my voice flat. 2 agents rushed forward, tackling Mark to the dirty wooden floor. He grunted as his face hit the planks. They wrenched his arms behind his back. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut, click, 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 was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Mark Davidson, you are under arrest for insurance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy, Miller recited, walking over to him. You have the right to remain silent, Mark was screaming as they hauled him up. She's in on it. She planned it with me, arrest her too. She's lying. Miller didn't even look at him. He looked at me. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I watched as they dragged my husband, my ex-husband, toward the door. As he passed me, he thrashed, trying to look at me. Sarah, he screamed, spit flying from his mouth. You can't do this. I'm the father of your child, Sarah. I stood there, the gun still in my hand, lowered to my side. I didn't flinch. I watched him until he was shoved into the back of an unmarked SUV, waiting at the end of the pier. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Agent Miller walked over to me. You okay? I holstered the gun in my purse. Is it over? For him, it's just beginning, Miller said. With the amount of money he moved and the federal nature of the insurance claim, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. Mandatory minimums. He won't see a beach for a long time. And the debt? I asked. My house? We have his confession on the wire. Miller tapped his ear. Plus the documents you gave us. We can prove the debts were incurred as part of his criminal enterprise without your knowledge. The bank will back off. The house is yours. It'll be a bureaucratic nightmare for a few months, but you're safe. I nodded. Safe. It was a strange word. Go home, Ms. Davidson, Miller said gently. Kiss your daughter goodnight. I walked back to my car alone. The rain had stopped. The air felt cleaner, sharper. I sat in the driver's seat of the Volvo, but I didn't start the engine immediately. I looked at the empty passenger seat where the speeding ticket had been. I had won. I had taken down the man who tried to destroy me. I had secured my home. But as I drove home through the quiet streets of Seattle, passing the sleeping houses with their manicured lawns and their hidden secrets, I realized something. The anger was gone, but the emptiness remained. I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark. I walked inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. I was free, but freedom had a cost. I walked into the kitchen. The pile of mail was still there on the floor where I had dropped it. I kicked it aside. I went upstairs to Lily's room. She was asleep clutching her teddy bear. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. She looked so much like him. Daddy's not coming home, baby, I whispered into the darkness. But Mommy is here, and Mommy is never going to let anyone hurt us again. I went to my bedroom, our bedroom. I looked at the king-sized bed that felt like a vast wasteland. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower hot as I could stand it. I stripped off my clothes, the trench coat, the black dress, the heels. I stepped under the spray, letting the scalding water wash away the smell of the boathouse, the smell of Mark's cologne, the smell of fear. I scrubbed my skin until it was red. I wanted to wash away the last 10 years. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I saw my reflection in the steamed-up mirror. I wiped the glass with my hand. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same woman who had stood in the cemetery 2 days ago. Her eyes were older, harder, but they were clear. I walked back into the bedroom. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. A notification from the bank. Alert credit inquiry removed. Score updated. I opened the app. My credit score had jumped. Not much, but it was a start. And then another notification. An email from Robert Thorne, attorney at law. Subject, the estate of Mark Davidson. I frowned. Estate. He wasn't dead? Why would there be an estate email? I opened it. Dear Sarah, per our conversation regarding the hidden assets discovered during the preliminary investigation, my eyes widened. Hidden assets, I read on. It appears Mr. Davidson had a separate offshore account in the Cayman Islands that was not linked to the fraudulent loans. This account contains approximately $450,000. Since these funds were deposited prior to the illegal activities and appear to be from his legitimate commission earnings years ago, and since you are the sole beneficiary of his assets while he is incarcerated and pending divorce settlement, I stopped reading. $450,000. It wasn't $2 million, but it was enough. It was enough to pay off the mortgage. It was enough for Lily's college. It was enough to start over. Mark had hidden money from me for years. A runaway fund. And now, because he was in prison and I was his lawful wife, I had control over it. A laugh bubbled up in my chest. A real laugh this time. It started low and built until I was shaking with it. He had saved money to leave me. And now that money would save me from him. The irony was delicious. I walked over to the window and looked out at the front yard. The grass was long unkempt. "Tomorrow," I said aloud. "Tomorrow I'm hiring the best damn gardener in Seattle." I climbed into bed. For the first time in months, I didn't check the locks. I didn't dread the morning. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming of drowning. 6 months later, the rain in Seattle stopped. Or maybe it was just that I stopped noticing it. I stood on the front porch of the house on Evergreen Terrace, holding a steaming mug of Nespresso, watching the sunrise burn the mist off the Cascade Mountains. The lawn, once a jungle of neglect that invited HOA fines, was now a carpet of manicured emerald velvet. The sound of a gas-powered edger buzzed in the distance. Jorge, the gardener I hired the day after Mark's arrest, was already at work. He was expensive, but every time I wrote his check, I felt a surge of satisfaction. It was money Mark would have spent on baccarat or bottle service now being used to keep my curb appeal flawless. I took a sip of coffee. It was rich, dark, and tasted like victory. I went back inside. The house smelled different now. Gone was the scent of Mark's cloying cologne and the stale anxiety of unpaid bills. Now it smelled of eucalyptus and fresh linen. The foyer was clear of Amazon boxes. In their place stood a sleek modern console table with a vase of fresh white hydrangeas. I walked into the kitchen. Lily was sitting at the island eating organic oatmeal with berries, her legs swinging happily. She was wearing a new dress, one that wasn't a hand-me-down or bought from a clearance rack. "Mom, are we still going to the zoo on Saturday?" she asked, milk mustache on her upper lip. "Absolutely," I said, kissing the top of her head. "And afterwards, we're going to get gelato. The big one. The biggest one they have." She giggled. It was a sound I hadn't heard in 2 years. Since Mark died, and subsequently went to prison, Lily had blossomed. The tension that used to vibrate through the floorboards of this house had evaporated. She didn't have to walk on eggshells around a father whose mood swung with the stock market. I checked my watch. A Cartier Tank Française. A gift to myself. Vintage, understated, purchased with the first dividend check from my investment portfolio. "Finish up, sweetie," I said. "Grandma is coming to pick you up. Mommy has a meeting downtown." "Is it with the lawyers again?" "One last time?" I smiled. "After today, no more lawyers." The drive to the Federal Correctional Institution in SeaTac was short, but it felt like crossing into a different dimension. I was driving a white Tesla Model Y now. The Volvo, with its memories of tears and vomit, had been traded in the week the insurance settlement cleared not the life insurance, but the settlement from the lawsuit I filed against Mark's business partners for emotional distress and financial negligence. I parked in the visitor's lot. The prison was a monolith of gray concrete and razor wire designed to strip the soul of color. I checked my reflection in the visor mirror. I was wearing a cream-colored power suit tailored to within an inch of its life and red lipstick. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like the CEO of my own life. I walked through security. The metal detectors, the pat-downs, the heavy clank of steel doors locking behind me, it was all theater designed to intimidate. It didn't work. I had lived with a narcissist for 10 years. I knew how to handle intimidation. I sat in the visitation room on the free side of the thick plexiglass. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. Other visitors looked tired, beaten down by the system. I sat with my spine-straight hands folded on the table. The door on the other side buzzed. Mark walked in. The transformation was jarring. The tan from Miami was long gone, replaced by a sallow fluorescent pallor. His hair, once his pride and joy, was thinning and cut into a rough buzz. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. He looked smaller. Without his Italian suits and his Rolex, without the props of his con, he was just a middle-aged man with shifty eyes and bad posture. He sat down. He picked up the black phone receiver. I picked up mine. "Sarah," he said. His voice was scratchy. "You look expensive." "Hello, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the emotion he was fishing for. "You didn't bring Lily." He said, a hint of accusation in his tone. I will never bring Lily here, I replied. She thinks you're working on an oil rig in Alaska. That's the story we agreed on. It's better than Daddy is in a cage because he stole from grandmother's. He winced. It wasn't grandmother's. It was accredited investors. Tomato, tomato. I waved my hand dismissively. How are you enjoying the accommodations? I hear the Meatloaf Tuesday is to die for. He glared at me through the glass. Cut the crap, Sarah. Why are you here? You signed the divorce papers last week. You got the house. You got full custody. What else do you want? My kidney. I'm here to close the loop, I said, and to deliver some news. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I held it up to the glass. It was a bank transfer confirmation. Mark squinted. Then his eyes widened. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking like wet dough. That's, he stammered. That's the Cayman account. Account number 84 Bravo Zulu. I recited from memory. $452,300.12. He gripped the phone tighter. How that account was encrypted. It wasn't in my name. It was under the shell company. You used your mother's maiden name as the security question, Mark. I sighed, shaking my head. For a mastermind, you really are basic. But I didn't hack it. I didn't have to. The FBI found it during the forensic audit. But here's the fun part. I leaned in closer to the glass. Because the funds in that account were proven to be deposited before your fraudulent period. Back when you were actually selling real estate legally, the feds didn't seize it as proceeds of crime. They considered it a marital asset. Mark's breathing quickened. A spark of hope lit up his eyes. So it's ours, Sarah. Listen, that's almost $500,000. Keep it safe. Put it in a high-yield trust. In 5 years, with good behavior, I could be out to a halfway house. We could... I laughed. It was a sharp, sudden sound that made the guard look over. I asked. Oh, Mark, you still don't get it. I flipped the paper over. On the back was a photo, a glossy brochure of a storefront in downtown Bellevue. The sign above the door read, The Apothecary, Holistic Pharmacy and Wellness. I spent it, I said. Mark stopped breathing. You... what? I spent it. I repeated, savoring the words. All of it. I cashed out the Cayman account. I paid off the mortgage on the house entirely. No more bank payments. And with the remaining $200,000, I opened my own business. Remember, I used to be a pharmacist before you told me my place was in the kitchen. You spent my nest egg, he whispered, his voice trembling with rage. That was my freedom fund. That was my life. No, I corrected him. That was the money you hid from your wife and child while we were eating frozen pizza. That was the money you were going to use to sip mojitos in Belize with your blonde girlfriend while the bank took our home. I watched the realization crash over him. The last shred of control he thought he had, the secret money, the leverage was gone. He wasn't just in prison, he was broke. Even if he got out tomorrow, he would have nothing. You bitch! He spat the veins in his neck, bulging. You stole from me. I liquidated marital assets in accordance with the divorce decree, I said coolly. It's all perfectly legal. Judge Henderson complimented me on my financial prudence. Mark slammed the receiver against the table. I'll sue you, I'll appeal. With what money? I asked. You have a public defender, Mark, and I have the best divorce attorney in the state. You're done. He stared at me, his chest heaving. The anger slowly drained out of him, replaced by a hollow, crushing defeat. He slumped in his chair. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. Not as an accessory, but as a force. Why? He asked, his voice broken. Why did you have to destroy everything I gave you a good life? You gave me a cage, I said. And then you tried to burn the cage down with me inside it. I just walked out of the fire. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. Goodbye, Mark. I won't be visiting again. Lily will send you a card on Christmas. Maybe. I hung up the phone. He was shouting something behind the glass, banging his fist on the table, mouthing obscenities. The guard was moving in to restrain him. I didn't look back. I turned on my heel and walked out of the room. The steel door clanged shut behind me, sealing him in his gray world while I stepped out into the lobby. The air outside tasted sweeter than oxygen. It tasted like possibility. I walked to my car, my heels clicking a rhythm of independence on the pavement. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Robert, my lawyer. Or rather, Robert, the man who used to be my lawyer until we had dinner last week to celebrate the final decree. Robert, papers filed. You are officially Sarah Miller again. Dinner at the Pink Door to celebrate 7 p.m. I smiled. Sarah Miller. It had been 10 years since I saw that name on a driver's license. It felt like meeting an old friend. I typed back, make it 7:30. I have to stop by the store first. I got into the Tesla. I didn't go home immediately. I drove to downtown Bellevue. I parked in front of a beautiful brick building on Main Street. The windows were covered in brown paper, but the sign was already up. The apothecary. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell of sawdust and fresh paint greeted me. Contractors were busy installing the shelving units. It was going to be beautiful, a blend of modern medicine and natural wellness. My vision. My empire. I walked to the back counter, running my hand over the smooth quartz surface. For years, I had been told I wasn't enough. Not smart enough to manage the money, not pretty enough to keep his attention, not interesting enough to be anything more than a background character in the Mark Davidson show. I pulled a marker from my pocket and walked to the whiteboard on the wall where the contractors had listed the pending tasks. Under owner. I wrote in big bold letters, Sarah Miller. I stood back and admired it. My phone rang again. It was a notification from Credit Karma. Your score has updated. I glanced at the screen. 8:15. Excellent. I walked out of the shop, locking the door behind me. The sun was fully up now, bathing the street in a golden light. I put on my sunglasses, not Ray-Bans, never Ray-Bans, but a pair of oversized Celine frames. I got in the car and merged onto the highway, heading toward the school to pick up Lily. I turned on the radio. A classic rock song was playing something about breaking chains. I turned the volume up. As I drove, I thought about Mark sitting in his cell, staring at the concrete walls, realizing that the trophy wife he discarded had not only survived him, but had cannibalized his secret life to fuel her own. He wanted to be a ghost in Miami. Instead, he was a memory in Seattle. And I was the one who was truly alive. I merged into the express lane, pressed the accelerator, and didn't look back.